It was the night of November 22nd, 1910. At Hoboken Station, New Jersey, a train was preparing to roll. But this was no ordinary train. The windows were drawn tight. No light escaped from within. The men stepping onto that luxury car did not call each other by their real names. They used code names. If you happened to see them that night, and if you asked where they were going, they would tell you they were going duck hunting, a vacation for wealthy gentlemen. That was the greatest lie in modern financial history, because on that fateful train car, there were no hunting rifles, no hunting dogs, only the most calculating minds of the financial world at that time. They were not hunting ducks. They were hunting something else. They were hunting the financial freedom of America. Among the shadows stepping onto that train was a stranger, a man who spoke English with a thick German accent, a man whom history textbooks often conveniently forget to mention. His name was Paul Warburg, and that night he carried in his leather briefcase a detailed plan, a blueprint to transfer the entire money-printing power of a sovereign nation into the hands of a private group. That fateful night at Jekyll Island gave birth to a monster that we today call the Federal Reserve. And the only reason you have to work harder every day while your savings buy fewer goods starts exactly from that cold night. Welcome to the naked truth. Before we dissect the profile of this mysterious architect, let me ask you, where are you watching this video from? And do you feel the money in your wallet evaporating?
Let us go back in time a bit. To understand why Paul Warburg was so important, we need to understand America before he arrived. In the early 20th century, America was a financial Wild West in the literal sense. No central bank, no personal income tax. Money was backed by real gold. If you had $20, you could exchange it for a 1-ounce gold coin. Prosperity was in the hands of the people. But for international bankers, this was a nightmare. They could not print money at will. They could not lend money they did not actually have. They needed a new system, a system that allowed them to control inflation and deflation at will. And this is where Paul Warburg appeared. Warburg was not an ordinary American. He was born into a noble Jewish banking family in Germany, the Warburg dynasty, a family with close ties to the powerful Rothschild dynasty in Europe. In 1902, Warburg arrived in America, and he was shocked. He looked at the American banking system and called it primitive. Why? Because it was too free. He said America needed a more modern system, like the Reichsbank in Germany or the Bank of England, a system of centralized power. But Warburg faced a huge problem. The American people at that time hated the concept of a central bank. They remembered the warnings of Thomas Jefferson. They remembered Andrew Jackson's war to destroy the central bank. They knew that a central bank was a tool of slavery. So what did Warburg have to do? He needed a crisis. Does that sound familiar? In 1907, a financial panic broke out. The stock market crashed. Banks closed. People lined up to withdraw money but could not. Fear took over. And guess who stepped in to rescue them? J.P. Morgan, a close ally in Warburg's network. But after the rescue, the message they sent out was clear. America needs a more stable system. We need a guardian so this never happens again. They created the problem to make the people panic, and then they offered the solution they had prepared in advance. Does that sound familiar? Like 2008? Like 2020? Every time a crisis happens, power is further concentrated into the hands of a few. Paul Warburg was the man chosen to design that solution. He was not a politician. He was not elected. He was an expert, a man standing in the shadows, whispering into the ears of senators, writing academic papers, and convincing the elite to hand over the power to print money to them, promising to keep the economy stable forever. But that stability came at a price, and that price is your prosperity. Warburg knew he could not call it a central bank. That name was political poison. So he used his natural talent for crowd psychology. He needed a new name, a name that sounded governmental, sounded safe, but was actually completely private. And that is why the train to Jekyll Island had to be absolutely secret. Because if the public knew Warburg, a German banker, was writing monetary laws for America, they would have revolted immediately. Let us pause for a moment. You might be thinking, okay, they set up a central bank to control currency. Everyone knows that. But here's the twist that few realize. The real goal of Paul Warburg and the meeting at Jekyll Island was not to prevent banking crises. Their goal was to legalize the creation of crises. Before the Fed, if a bank printed too much money and did not have gold to pay customers, that bank would collapse. That was the market's natural self-defense mechanism. It punished the greedy. But Warburg wanted to eliminate that punishment mechanism. He wanted to create a lender of last resort. That means big banks gamble and lose with your money. They will not go bankrupt. Instead, the central bank will print new money to bail them out. And who will pay for that newly printed money? You will, through inflation. Warburg did not build a system to protect the American economy. He built a system to protect the banking cartel from bankruptcy by transferring the risk to the people. They call it the Federal Reserve, but look at the truth. It is not federal. It is privately owned by member banks. It has no reserve. It does not hold gold. It only holds debt. And it is not a bank. It is an engine of inflation. Warburg pulled off the scam of the century. He convinced the U.S. Congress to sign a piece of paper allowing a private group to control the lifeblood of the entire economy. But the bill for this scam is far more terrifying than you can imagine.
Let us dive deeper into Paul Warburg's profile to see the scale of this network. When Paul Warburg went to Jekyll Island, he did not go alone. He went with 5 other men: Nelson Aldrich, Frank Vanderlip, Henry Davison, Charles Norton, and A. Piatt Andrew. 6 men. In 1913, it was estimated that these 6 men represented about 1/4 of the total wealth of the entire world at that time. Let that number sink in. 1/4 of the world's wealth sitting in a closed room, smoking cigars, drinking brandy, and writing laws for you to follow. Paul Warburg was the brain of the group. He was the only one who deeply understood the operating mechanism of European central banks. His mission was to Americanize that model. He drafted what was called the Aldrich Plan. Initially, Congress rejected it because they recognized the scent of Wall Street bankers. But Warburg did not give up. He was a master of manipulation. He and his allies executed a bait-and-switch tactic. They publicly criticized the new bill from the Democrats, the Glass-Owen bill, pretending that bankers hated it. They screamed that this bill would destroy banking and that the government was interfering too deeply. The people and naive politicians thought that if the bankers hated it, it must be good for the people. But the reality? The Glass-Owen bill was a carbon copy of the Aldrich Plan that Warburg wrote on Jekyll Island, just changing a few terms. Warburg fooled all of America. He made them voluntarily drink a dose of poison, thinking it was tonic. And what was the result? Look at the statistics. They do not lie. Statistic number 1. Since the Fed was established in 1913, the US dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power. A $1 bill from Warburg's time is now worth about 3 cents. Statistic number 2. In 1913, America's national debt was only about $2.9 billion. Today, it has surpassed $34 trillion, a terrifying growth that no real economy can keep up with. Statistic number 3. Before 1913, America's long-term inflation was almost zero. Prices were stable. After 1913, inflation became a default feature, not a bug. Warburg designed a system based on debt. Every dollar printed is a debt with attached interest. What does this mean? It means debt is always greater than the existing money. America and the whole world is trapped in a spiral with no escape. To pay old debt, more money must be printed, and printing more money creates more new debt. It is a giant mousetrap, and Warburg designed the trigger. But Warburg's role did not stop at writing laws. After the Fed was established, he became one of the first members of the Board of Governors. He sat there, directly controlling the monster he created. Warburg's network was even more terrifying. His brother, Max Warburg, was the head of Germany's financial intelligence agency during World War I. Did you hear that clearly? Paul Warburg ran the American financial system. His brother ran the German financial system. Two nations fighting a bloody war, but the Warburg family sat in the middle, funding both sides and making huge profits from the war debts of both nations. That is real power, power that transcends national borders. That is why they needed a central bank independent of the government, so they could serve the interests of the financial empire instead of the interests of the American people. Warburg created a mechanism called fractional reserve banking on a national level. It allows banks to create money out of thin air. If you deposit $100 into a bank, they can lend out $900. They create inflation, they inflate asset bubbles, and when the bubble bursts, they confiscate your real assets like houses and land at cheap prices. That is the process. Pump money, inflate bubbles, withdraw money, collect assets. A wealth transfer process, the greatest in history, operated smoothly for over 100 years. And Paul Warburg, the quiet man with cold eyes on the train to Jekyll Island, was the one who wrote the source code for this blood-sucking machine. We are living in Paul Warburg's dream, and it is the nightmare of the middle class. The system Warburg built in 1913 is reaching the end of its mathematical cycle. The debt is too large to pay. Interest rates are strangling the economy, and the heirs to Warburg's legacy, the current central bank governors, are preparing for the next step. They know the old system is collapsing, and they have prepared a new Jekyll plan. It is Central Bank Digital Currency, or CBDC. If in 1913, Warburg took away control of the value of your money, then in 2026, with CBDC, they will take away control of how you spend your money. They will complete the model of absolute control that Warburg dreamed of. Indifference is your biggest enemy right now. Most people out there still think inflation is due to gas prices or some distant war. They do not know that the real enemy lies right in the structure of the money they hold in their hands. Do not let history repeat itself with you. Do not let yourself be a victim of a digital version of the Jekyll Island conference. You need to understand the rules of the game so you are not eliminated from the game. If you want to hear unfiltered truths, hidden files that mainstream media never dares to publish, hit the subscribe button. We have much more to expose. The phantom of Jekyll Island is still there, but this time we have seen him. See you in the next video. We are witnessing the death of a currency regime. These events happen once every few generations, and they wipe out the middle class who are unprepared. In Germany in 1923, the middle class became poor in a matter of months. In Venezuela, in Zimbabwe, in Lebanon, in Argentina, the story is always the same. The people who held paper lost everything. The people who held real assets, gold, land, commodities, survived. You do not have to be a victim of the Federal Reserve. You do not have to let your labor be stolen by inflation. The winner of this clash was decided the moment it began. Math wins. Physics wins. Scarcity wins. The dollar is a melting ice cube. Gold is the freezer. You have a choice to make. You can keep betting on the paper that has lost 99% of its value, hoping this time will be different, or you can align yourself with the asset that has outlived every empire, every dictator, and every central bank in human history. The bell is ringing for the final round. Protect yourself. If you want the unfiltered truth about the economy, the history of money, and how to survive the coming transition, make sure you are subscribed. We do not sell fear here. We sell history, and history is undefeated.